Hello, hello. Ron Callis here with another episode of Automation Unplugged. Today is Wednesday, April 7th, 12:30 p.m. in the year of 2021. I sometimes have to check just to make sure what month it is. I hope you all are doing well. As I always do, let me jump over to Facebook to make sure that technology is behaving and that we're actually streaming live. So bear with me here. Let me refresh. All right, there we go. I see that we are live. So Automation Unplugged is brought to you, as always, by my day job over at One Firefly. And, this is an exciting week. Why is it an exciting week? Well, not only did I have the pleasure to present a branding seminar at the HTSA Spring Conference. I did that on Monday. And I was able to teach it at two different time slots. So we did an afternoon slot and an evening slot, and it was pretty fantastic. Not saying the course was, but the response, the interaction from the HTSA members, the attendance. I know many of us out there in virtual land are zoomed out, they say, or tired of tuning in. And the level of attention and responsiveness of the HTSA members to the conference, it was impressive. I mean, it was somewhere around 95% dealer participation. And of course, all of the vendors participated. But the sessions were impressive levels of attendance. And I had a lot of fun cooking up a new presentation, so much so that we're, stay tuned to One Firefly. I think we're going to take that content and bring that to the marketplace at large. There's a lot of new thoughts and ideas, and it's really just high-level branding and the power of branding, and which makes our guest today simply perfect. That was the theme of the seminars on Monday, and that is today, for show number 164, I have the pleasure of having the one and only Susan Cashen on the show. And Susan is today, she's a strategic advisor, she's a board director, and she also runs her own consultancy. And I met Susan when she was in the role of senior VP of marketing at Control 4, and she was she'll help me with the year, but I want to say it was maybe somewhere around 2017 or 2017 or 18 when she and the team over at C4 were rolling out their nationwide certified showroom program, and One Firefly partnered with her, Susan and her team at C4, and we were assisting with a rollout of marketing strategies for C4 members. And it was a lot of fun. She said she wouldn't do business unless we had sat in the same room at the same time and really got to know me and got to know us. And so I flew out to Salt Lake and met with her team, and then she flew to Florida in our little office in Davie, Florida, which we're actually moving out of, Susan, this month. We're moving into an office in Coral Springs, and had the pleasure of watching her. She and Martin and the team ultimately manage the acquisition or merger into SnapAV, and now she's helping lots of businesses around the world in many different capacities. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring Susan on. And let's get this party started. Hey, Susan, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
It's busy days over here at One Firefly, but it's good busy, so there's no complaining.
Awesome.
Where are you coming to us from? Where are you physically located right now?
I am calling from the most beautiful area in the world, Lake Tahoe, California. So we've been spending most of the pandemic sheltering in place in our home in Truckee, and living the mountain life, which is pretty good.
Tell me about the mountain life. Like, I don't know that. I've never been to the area. What is it like if you go outside and go for a hike? What's it look like?
Pine trees everywhere and the Sierra Mountains. So, my life at Control 4 was based in in Salt Lake City. And I used to commute from California, and over time just ended up getting a condo in Utah. And I'm an East Coast girl. Growing up, you only went to the mountains in the winter. You didn't go in the summer. That was what the beach was for. And my tenure at Control 4 taught me and my husband and my kids that mountain life, 12 months a year is the way to go. And so when I left the company, a big life decision was, do we stay in Utah or kind of move closer to our home base? And we made that decision, and thank God we did, because with the pandemic, our children could, it's easy for the kids to come up and visit. And it's been a little bit of heaven on earth.
A few years ago, and maybe many listening wouldn't know this, but a few years ago, my wife and I were kind of in a decision process where we were deciding whether we stayed in Florida or we were envisioning, a mountain life somewhere. And ultimately, my son got accepted into a particular private school with, fantastic academics and a well-known reputation. And so we decided that school was the magnet that was going to keep us here. But we've decided that when he graduates, we're gonna move somewhere to the mountains. So how did you decide your current, the Lake Tahoe area, if you look at all the amazing places around the country? I mean, how did you make that decision?
Well, these two little creatures called grandkids came into our lives, and they are a 3-hour drive. And while Salt Lake, it was so easy to get to Park City or to Alta, the ski resorts from the Salt Lake airport. All in, it's probably 2.5 hours to get to the mountains from the Bay Area. But getting on an airplane with all that baby gear and stuff, we kind of rolled the dice and placed a bet. I mean, this is all about luring adult children to come hang with you.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
God, we won big. So
I follow you on Instagram, and I know that your family's a big part of your life. And I appreciate you allowing me to follow you on Instagram. And it looks like you have
I'll
a
let
beautiful
anyone
family.
follow me, and as long as they just say how gorgeous my grandbabies are, that's good.
Well, all right, they're pretty amazing, stunning little babies.
Thank you.
We have a lot of people saying hi, and that's one of the fun of doing a live show here. So I'm just going to give a few shout outs. We have Joe Whitaker says, Susan is one of those people that holds a special place in my life.
Love Joe.
That is
the checks in the mail.
Checks in the mail. That's worth at least $10. I don't know. Yeah. That's a good one. Brandy, she says, hi, Susan. Welcome to the show. Greetings from Las Vegas.
Hey there.
Wes says, hey, Susan, welcome to Automation Unplugged. I'm all about them. Wes lives in the mountains. He's in the North Carolina. Wes, drop into the comments. Which mountains? Where are you located? And then Quest, she says, mountain life is the best. Glad to have you, Susan.
Thank you.
And lots of hellos. Adam says, welcome to the show. Tina says, excited to have you on the show. Looking forward to this conversation. And Joe gave us a ha. So, Susan, you have an impressive, dare I say, pedigreed background of experiences in Silicon Valley. At some point, you entered our industry. You clearly made a big impact. Can you walk us through it? I think from my feedback that I get from people that listen to the show or watch the show, they love learning about the backgrounds of all the people that make up this space. So what's your background?
Well, I was a consumer marketing person from the East Coast, actually. And I think I mentioned that I started my career back in the olden days when you would, in order to do any type of advertising, you had to spend a ton of money because there was nothing digital. Right. So we did print advertising, TV advertising, radio, and billboard. And then you brought in a PR agency to get an editorial coverage. The world obviously has changed substantially since then. But I loved my early part of my career. I worked on such brands as Keds, Stride Right shoes. I did a lot in the shoe business because I was in the Boston market in the 80s. I was a runner, and so I got to work on the New Balance account, and Bill Rogers won the marathon that year, really dating myself.
Sure. Was Bill Rogers from New Balance?
He was the first spokesperson for New Balance. Yeah. So
he was
wearing New Balance shoes, winning the Boston Marathon.
I've got to put up Wes's comment then. He says, I'm outside Raleigh, but I love running and spending time in the Appalachian Mountains. Wes is one of those super marathon runners.
I've only done a few, and I've shifted to cycling now. But anyway, so as an agency person, it was real. We moved to Silicon Valley with my husband's work. We called him a chip peddler. He worked in the semiconductor business, and we moved to Silicon Valley in 1994. And I felt like I landed in Mars because it was all technology. And I worked for a very prestigious communications firm that was acquired by Hill & Knowlton that represented the high-flying technology brands at the time. So there was like big rush in client-server technology, Sybase and Borland. And here I come, like I didn't even know what technology was. But it was very fortuitous timing because suddenly in the Valley, all these startups were getting funded for this thing called the internet. And even software companies were building product for like a really scary audience called the consumer. And all these technology marketing folks had no idea how to move beyond talking about speeds and feeds and really getting into like, how do you build a brand when you're talking to a consumer, and how do you connect to a consumer? So the relocation gods were working in my favor. And suddenly when I would talk to a product manager or a CTO or even a CEO, and I would say, I have no idea what you just said. Like, I'm completely confused. I didn't sound stupid. They were like, she's a genius. So
because you were the consumer, not understanding what the message was.
Yeah. And so I just kind of applied the same practices that I applied in the East Coast of, how do you connect with the consumer audience? How do you position a brand so it's meaningful? How do you connect, not intellectually, but emotionally? And that's how you kind of get your name on the map. And so I worked with a number of startups, most of whom are, my favorite was drcoop.com, based in Texas, defunct. But I worked with, I did the MS Microsoft and NBC merger. If you remember, why do you need MSNBC? That introduced me to the television industry, and the chairman of MSNBC was on the board of this startup called TiVo. And he introduced me to Mike Ramsey and Jim Barton, and they asked me to kind of manage, after 15 years of being an agency person, they convinced me to come to the evil, dark corporate side. And I was hired to build a brand for TiVo and manage the consumer launch. And that was the first time I realized, with due respect to One Firefly, building the brand, doing all the marcom, the creative assets is only one facet of the business. It's really, how can marketing really be a revenue generate? Like, operationally, how do you integrate into systems and sales and product and engineering? And then I fell in love with that and kind of started my corporate side of my career.
TiVo was a Silicon Valley startup?
Mm-hmm.
How were the expectations? Like, what were you asked to do? Go make this thing a global brand? Was that, here's this brand, here's this idea, and here's a bunch of money that we're going to burn to try to make this thing? Like, how were you even managed or held accountable? What were the goals you were trying to achieve?
Well, interestingly, I talked about the gods on it's working in my favor. Here's a story of the gods not working in my favor. So I joined the company. Silicon Valley, there was tons of venture capital thrown into TiVo. I think they raised about $250 million. They had strategic investors like AOL and Sony and Panasonic and Thomson, all were big investors in bringing that company to life. It was the 90s. There was a lot of hubris in Silicon Valley. And when I was getting recruited, I was told I had a $70 million marketing budget. And we were going to do national TV. We were going to have these were the day of retail, right? So you had retail teams going in and teaching all the Best Buy guys, the Fry's guys, Circuit City. Most of those companies don't even exist anymore.
I was going to say, I'm from Virginia, so I know Circuit City. That was born in Richmond,
Tweeter,
Virginia.
if you're tuning in from Boston, we had demo days. We had like the plans were off the charts crazy. I literally joined the company like in February, like we kind of signed the deal at CES, start in February. The market crashes in March. And so that $70 million budget ratcheted back to $14 million. We're supposed to launch in October. And the bulk of that budget was really to subsidize the cost of the product. So when we launched TiVo, the entry level product price point was like $800, right? And
for a consumer product.
For a consumer product that they never even knew they needed. And then you had to pay this monthly fee. That doesn't even cover the cost of the product. I mean, like disk drives back then were like this big and really expensive, and they weren't a chip at that point in time.
Yeah.
So most of like the outbound marketing budget was minuscule. So goodbye TV advertising, goodbye demo days. Like how are you going to build this brand? And by the way, but the sales goals. The unit
they didn't change.
Goals, they didn't change. Of course not.
Of course not.
But this is where like one of my most valuable professional lessons came from was yes, like creative makes a difference, brand position makes a difference, but if you have a crap product experience, it doesn't matter. And TiVo was like an exceptional, beautiful, amazing, consumers told us life-changing consumer product experience. And so we just shined the spotlight on that. And we, instead of outlying cash, we gave away hundreds of units to people who had a platform to talk about the TiVo experience. So we started with broadcast, with radio. We did sports radio DJs, talk radio. Howard Stern was a big, evangelist. If you think of every local market, local radios guys, we gave them TiVos. They record their favorite games, and then they would just wax on forever on air about TiVo.
So you were practicing influencer marketing before influencer marketing was a thing.
And quite honestly, we probably ruined it for product seeding too, because we didn't have to pay to give away product. Now you have to. We showed up at the Emmys. We showed up at the Sundance Film Festival. We gave units to celebrities, to TV writers. And then suddenly TiVo's getting written into Sex and the City, and, movies are including TiVo. TiVo, the product experience of I don't know if you guys had TiVo. It had this great bloop bloop sound that was part of the brand. That just helped us build a lot of visibility. And then because we were so dramatically changing consumer behavior and quite frankly threatening this multi-billion-dollar industry called TV advertising, we had tremendous PR appeal. So I remember am I allowed to curse it? No, crapping.
Yeah, I do it regularly. No, yeah,
sorry,
go for it.
Crapping in my pants when I take a call from Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes and he wants to do a show on how we're destroying TV advertising.
I've got a question getting posted about that. I didn't understand it, but now I'm hearing you talk about it, and I understand that this is clearly a thing. Ted is saying, I'm guessing there was a lot of panic about ad revenue from TV networks. What kind of resistance did you get from them as you were building TiVo? Thanks, Ted, for that.
So before I joined the company, the TiVo developed some TV spots that they were going to run, and I killed them. They did run a little bit, but it was so Silicon Valley centric and not customer centric, which is an important lesson for integrators as well. The TV spot was like the Grim Reaper walking in the door of a TV executive and throwing the TV executive out the window. And the Valley, the investors and the leadership team were like, oh, this is great TV spots. And I was saying, like, what does this have to do with the consumer? And you're like just throwing kerosene on a potential fire. Like, this is a horrible creative strategy. And instead, when you talk to consumers, they didn't care about the fact that we were changing a business model. A Silicon Valley startup cares, but a consumer doesn't. And instead, the fact that we shifted our brand position of TiVo, TV your way, right? For the first time, you're in control. You can watch what you want whenever you want to. That was like, it seems every day now, like especially with so much content we have available. In the 90s, we didn't have nearly this much content. There was no web content. And so the ability to, record every Sesame Street on your TiVo. And when you're making dinner, put your 5-year-old in front of Sesame Street and not feel really terrible about him sitting on the couch watching TV so that you have a few minutes to prepare dinner, made a big difference in consumers' lives. But we made a point of being at a lot of TV industry conferences. We worked in partnership. We had viewership data that we could share with advertisers and the networks. And so we, as Mike Ramsey, the CEO, said, like, we knew there was a line in the sand. We didn't know quite where it was, but you knew if you crossed it.
Were you allowing the consumer to totally skip the commercial?
Oh, yeah. But yeah, of course, because it was recorded. You just fast forward through it all. But another startup called Replay TV, which doesn't exist, which didn't survive long, had on its remote a commercial skip button, and we felt that was crossing the line, whereas Replay didn't, and they got a lot more negative attention from the networks and the industry than
they kind of shielded you almost. They went out and took the heat, and you weren't the evil people with the skip button.
But we did, and again, from the consumer experience, like we did which was, an Oprah Winfrey giveaway was probably the biggest sales event we ever did in the history of the company. But second to that was we released the day after the Super Bowl, and it became an annual practice of like, what was the most rewatched moment of the Super Bowl that year. And it happened to be a Britney Spears Pepsi spot. And so the fact that we could communicate, TiVo consumers actually watched the commercial. And if it's a great commercial, they're going to watch it again and again. So kind of our position was make great commercials and consumers are going to watch it. If you make crap, they're going to skip over it.
They're going to skip over it. No, that's amazing to hear how you pivoted there. Where did you go from TiVo?
I left TiVo after about 5 years, and that was a lifestyle choice of, I stepped back, the lean in, lean out thing. My kids were, actually it was my son, my oldest was moving into high school. My husband traveled a lot for business, and I felt I needed to be home to micromanage homework and make sure that the kid could go on to college or do something. Good news is he's a grown man and a lawyer now, and very responsible.
He's doing pretty good for himself now.
Yeah. So it was a good bet, but not so much back then. And I kind of just did some freelance consulting work, and one of my clients' investors was an investor in this company I never heard of called Control4. And so I got a call from this venture capitalist and said, hey, Susan, will you meet with the CEO? He's going to be in San Francisco for some conference. And I think I was left with the impression I was going to talk to Will West, who is the founder of Control 4, about the complexities and the good, the good and the bad of working with Best Buy, and how can you balance Best Buy channel conflict with dealers. So I thought I was just meeting him for, coffee and breakfast. And he ended up talking to me about energy, and the Obama stimulus plan. And I had no idea, but basically he raised $20 million for Control 4 to spin out a separate division that was based in California. And he wanted to, and I ended up taking that hook completely, because I really liked the idea of, my midlife crisis of moving from entertainment, doing something green and sustainable. And Will had a great idea of, building a device that would communicate to all these smart meters that we're going to be rolling out with the Obama stimulus plan. Kind of feels very similar today. But there were billions of dollars that utilities were upgrading their electric infrastructure. And he wanted to have a role in that, of, as utilities were sending messages down to consumers' homes through Control 4 and Zigbee, we could communicate to the meter and then automate and control energy usage of devices in the home. So I loved that idea. I was the first employee of Control 4 Energy. And in talking to utilities, I think it took me about 6 months to realize the business plan that was sold to the board at Control 4 was wildly flawed. It would take 5 years to live through a pilot, yet alone realize, millions of Control 4 units going into homes, being the Trojan horse, offering opportunity to all of our Control 4 dealers to upsell, from an energy management solution to audio and video and lighting and everything else. And I think the board got a little impatient and, asked to make some dramatic changes. I was asked to kind of move away from energy and think about the core business. And so I think it was like 2010. I joined the company in 2008. In 2010, I moved over to kind of run global marketing for Control 4. And that's kind of when I started my foray into the CI channel.
When did Martin join?
He joined probably 2 years after that. So I think he joined in 12 or 11 or something like that. But, and I'm not sharing any, should I continue?
Yeah, this is great. I'm loving it. I hope the audience, no, I don't see many people leaving. So I think they're loving the story. This is awesome.
So, oh, wow. So when I started at the company, I was, I felt that the way we presented ourselves to dealers and to consumers was just off the mark. And I spent a lot of time working on just the visual design and the way we told the story of home automation. That's another story. But it was really my first time as an executive, and Martin really pushed this as well, really going into the field and really understanding the customer. And in our case, the customer was the integrator. And, we were talking earlier, Ron, that I was kind of snotty about this channel. My first CEDIA show, I'm like, this is so rinky dink. It's tiny. Like, where is, like the big, sexy visual presence that we were at CES, right? And at TiVo,
people from CEDIA aren't attending the Emmys necessarily, or the other events that you were mentioning. Where's
the sex sizzle here? And like, look how small these booths are, and like, where's the traffic? And there aren't crowds, and I don't, I'm not waiting in line at the airport for an hour to get a cab. Just jokingly, but I guess that, I'll jump to forward is, I fell in love with this channel. And who needs like big retailers when you're interacting at a very humanistic level with dealers who are building businesses, might be running huge businesses, but like the responsibility of them to be successful, not just for themselves and their families, but for all their employees. Traveling literally around the world and appreciating the enormity of that business responsibility really motivated me and motivated our company to kind of break the mold and do as much as we could to help integrators become successful. So I'm very, like, I love this channel. We can talk about that later, but
well, I was just going to agree. I mean, I joined the channel 20 years ago. I didn't have any of those other experiences you're describing. This is the only customer business type that I've professionally worked with. But I agree. I mean, why have I stayed for 20 years and why do I continue to invest time, money, and energy? It's because I just love helping the small business owner that are out there playing with amazing technology. We look forward. The future of technology and home and business is going to do nothing but increase. And you have, this is the, I want to say the American way. It's global, but the small business is really such an important player in society, and the number of people they employ and the opportunities they provide for themselves and their families. I equally love helping them. And that sounds like where you're coming from.
Yeah. And as a corporate brand, as a corporate entity in the channel, it's very, like I'll go back to my TiVo days, walking into a Best Buy meeting or a Circuit City meeting, you're sitting in a room with like 10 executive VPs, right? They all have enormous national responsibility. They have lots of budget. And so like what you needed to do to make them, I mean, yes, we did programs and we had tools, et cetera, but it was kind of like I'm appreciative just from a professional development point of view, the sandbox for creativity and building tools and ideating and architecting programs for our channel is so much more inspiring because our channel doesn't have those resources that the big national guys do. And so for the big brands serving the channel, there's a lot of room for creativity and, beyond just developing great product. My job was, and I ended up running training and support for Control4 too, like how do we make sure that the dealer experience was exceptional in those areas as well as just the product?
To bring it forward, I'll say forward to where you launched the C4 showroom initiative, and that was just a not too far in advance of ultimately the SnapAV merger. I know that you feel very strongly about experience and experiential selling, experiential marketing. Can you kind of give us like what your beliefs are there and maybe how that was realized in that program you launched?
Sure. Believe me, I love the stuff that Control4 built. I love buying stuff that this channel sells, but I don't buy products. I buy what those products can do for me. And part of this was tied back to my experience at Control4. At TiVo, is really understanding just how much equity delivering experiences for a consumer as opposed to selling a DVR is very different than explaining like you're in charge of you have access to your favorite shows whenever you want them. So it's just such a different, higher level value prop that consumers are willing to like place a bet and hold your hand and jump off the cliff with you, right? And I think that so many of our integrators in the channel are in the channel because they love gear, right? They love technology. They geek out on the speeds and feeds. And, at Control4, when we would launch products, so much of what we would do would really dive into that to win over the integrator. Why the EC controller line over a Crestron, automation platform. But at the end of the day, in terms of instructing the dealer to sell that, that's not going to resonate with the consumer. We weren't at Control4 we weren't ready to really embrace the consumer. until we got the experience right. And like my journey at Control4 was, I, as an executive now running marketing, I got a full automation system in my home, telling my husband and my family this is going to change our lives. And it did, but in a negative way. In the, if for those who are Control4 dealers will recall, we had a lot of software issues and glitchy experiences in the home. An example of this: one night we're asleep, everyone's in bed. 1 a.m, literally every light goes on in our home. It was like Control4 OS2 was wildly buggy. And my husband looks at me and says, get this shit out of our house. And the next day, an executive, I can call him get on this and fix this. But all I could think about was how many thousands of phone calls were generated that very same night that went to our dealers, and what a nightmare for the dealers who had pitched them on this amazing experience of Control4, and we were wildly under delivering it. And as an executive, the pain of going through, I felt like we were in an abyss in terms of brand reputation, experiential reputation. I can't believe our dealers even stayed with us during those dark years. And it probably took about 2 years to get out of the abyss. Martin was really good about focusing the company on experience. We stopped chasing other activities and opportunities and really locked down on the core business. And it wasn't until we really locked down on that I felt that we could really start to push that experience out to the consumer. And so we started with, video production, not just we really upped our game in the marketing side of pulling together the tools to articulate that experience to consumers. But then we would send consumers with, they'd be inspired and they would go to a dealer and the dealer would sell them boxes. And there was a disconnect there. And so when we felt that the time was right and ready, and traveling the world, there were some dealers that were amazing at selling experience. They had showrooms that were like Disneyland of home automation. And I was kind of I want me some of that at a corporate level, right? How can we programatize this and excite and inspire other integrators to embrace these practices that we've seen in China and Australia and Mexico and, well, certain areas throughout in North America as well. So that when you walked into a room, you were just I want this, right? I just built this house and, I'd go into a Sub-Zero Wolf showroom and I never wanted to leave, right? So how can we do that with automation? And that was kind of the genesis of, we were ready to sell an experience. How could we inspire integrators to present that experience and not just talk about technology? Let me show you a door station, but let me show you what this means in terms of security for your home. And even when you're not home, who's at the door well before Ring came around.
What would dealers do, Susan, if they couldn't, quote, afford to do a full build out in their own showroom? Or maybe that I'm not going to say they couldn't afford it. Maybe they weren't able or willing to budget for it.
It's expensive.
Did you advise other approaches?
Yeah. So, and I actually played matchmaker for a lot of integrators as well, but I always counsel integrators to look for partnerships in your local market. You could, comp an install in a luxury auto dealership, work with an interior designer or architect who has a beautiful showroom that's inviting and, has that interior design aesthetic, and outfit it with killer automation and have a little placard and work a deal where you can bring your clients to that show that benefits the partner. We had dealers that I just wildly respect in the UK who kind of showed me the way, working in design centers. We at Control4, we helped an integrator, and we would comp. I would go to my vendors and say, hey, give me a great deal on gear. I'm not buying it to sell it. I'm using it to sell more. So go to your vendors and say, give me a great deal, and let me put Sonos in, and let me put Control4 in, or Savant in, and Lutron in, and use this this area that's bringing in a lot of consumer traffic. That's the like-minded consumer. And that's another way that you can deliver on that experiential selling.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to take it high level now, just marketing in general. You traveled the world and met with all of, not all, but many of your C4 dealers, but I'll just say integrators at large. What do you believe is the area around, I'll say, marketing or branding that you would want them to understand from your experience about the influence or power of good branding or good marketing?
What I would want the integrators to take away?
Yeah, what are the things that maybe some of them, maybe most of them are not aware of? Like, I can tell you in my seat, I'm constantly explaining and educating. And I'm saying, if this is done, if you build your brand, it has these positive impacts. You're coming at this from a different direction. What's your perspective there?
Well, I always tell any business, right? Like,
Could be any business.
What's your secret sauce? Why are you in this business? Like, why are you different than someone else? What is that position statement that says, I'm going to put my trust in you versus the guy down the street? Maybe it's, that's not necessarily a creative tagline. It's really knowing what is your like core being and why you're so valuable to your customer. And I think that because by doing that, then as you build your brand and you stay true to that position, your brand's authentic, it's defensible, it's not a stretch. And it can also serve as kind of your vision for ways to extend that brand position. How do I want my logo to look? How do I want my website to look? Do I want my office to be this way or that way? What type of people do I want to hire? But there's so many different facets of how your brand is represented. Now, stepping away from the channel, one of my favorite brands, I think does a great job of demonstrating its brand position across many touch points, is the brand Restoration Hardware. Again, going back to my home in Tahoe, new home, need to buy some furniture. During the pandemic, very challenging to get things delivered on time. Restoration Hardware, beautiful website. We'll get to that in a minute. Beautiful description of products, lots of product detail, online people and in-store people to help me make sure my couch that I bought isn't too big, isn't too small. Wonderful experience from the website to looking at the product, to getting help. I place the order, the phone, I get a text when delivery is ready. They tell me exactly, at an hour before delivery, the guy says, I'm coming an hour from now. Just want to make sure that's still okay. This truck that's beautifully branded simply with Restoration Hardware pulls up to the front of my house. Two men come out with like matching black shorts, black socks, black shoes, black shirt with the logo on it. They knock on my door with a mask on with RH on it. They take their shoes off and put little booties with RH on it. The experience like across the board was just seamless and consistent. And every touch point I had with that company, from when I first started shopping to when they left my home, was exquisite, right? Same with the integration, right? Like, what is that brand position? You might get a phone call because a friend referred a friend to you. But what's your storefront look like online? Do I go to a website and am I greeted with something that I want in my home? Or am I greeted with, and believe me, lots of Control4 dealers were like this. The websites look like they were selling to plumbers, not to homeowners. Like, how are you representing your company, your offering, your brand position online? Because no matter, even if I love you, I'm going to research you, right? So if you're going to open a business in the channel, make sure that you're opening a beautiful website to supplement that business. That's a lot cheaper than buying real estate, right? And then if you do decide to have a showroom, make sure it has the same brand aesthetic that you want to appeal and represent to your prospective consumer. So that continuity and consistency of that, who you are, why you matter, is really important.
Tuck, what are your feelings around what makes a beautiful website? I'm sure lots of folks listening or watching are going, wow, what does Susan have in mind?
Whatever Ron and his team create.
Well, all right. There's $20 in the mail for you for that. I didn't expect you to say that, but
could you send that to Joe Whitaker too, please? Because
I'll send Joe $20 too.
I think it's, I want to be greeted with who you are and why you matter to me, right? So some sort of hero image, whether that's video, video is amazing. And I think video communicates so much and is so much more engaging, more expensive to produce, but telling your story is important, but not in a chest beating way, in a way that is really putting that customer, your client, front and center. I think it's really important to communicate what services you provide, whether that, and what brands you represent is important, because I'm shopping around. I need information, right? I think reviews on your website that speak client experience, that speaks to how amazing you are, is a really great reinforcement of your brand. What am I missing?
No, I'm gonna
name capture. You're a dodo if you're not taking advantage of traffic on your site and saying, connect with me, let me get your name and number. At Control 4, we created the dumbest, simplest form, and it was our greatest lead generation tool, which is like, what are you thinking about? What do you want to automate? What do you want? Like, tell me the size of your home. Tell me it was such a great tool. It seemed to be a really consumer facing tool, but those people who, gave us that information were much further down the sales cycle than someone who downloaded a free magazine, which is another great lead gen tool. So think about that too.
I want to talk about a very specific strategy that I think I know that you practiced when you were running the marketing at C4. I do not know if they are still doing it or not. You did Google advertising, and you did Google advertising with the goal of generating leads that you could give your dealers. Mm-hmm. And why did you do that? And did it work? And is that something that integrators, or it could be vendors, or whoever you are listening out there, when is that appropriate, at least in your opinion?
I'm a big believer in Google AdWords, and I also believe social media advertising is wildly efficient, and especially with Instagram and Facebook, it allows you to use imagery to connect with the consumer in a different way. So that's so for online advertising, I think those three are really efficient lead generation tools. And I actually, I wish that, not that I want to be an integrator, but if I were an integrator, I would spend all day long for that. And I would own and nurture those leads and follow up on those leads like a mad dog, because I spent the money for them. The problem for Control 4 was we generated the leads and all of our dealers would say, yeah, I want leads. But we would pass the leads on to the dealer, but the dealer didn't follow up on the lead, or thought he followed up on the lead, or passed the lead on to someone else who thought they followed up on the lead. And then we found out later that more often than not, the lead didn't get a phone call. And I think that's kind of a skin in the game type of thing, right? Like, if it's your money, you'll be damn sure to make sure someone picks up the phone and follows up. And we had methodologies. We put teams in place to qualify those leads. Our certified showroom program helped us kind of say, all right, you get the cream of the crop leads. And we had a more intimate relationship with those dealers so that we knew that they were following up. We created a dashboard so that it was easy for dealers to track where they were in the leads, and that our lead gen team knew if something was followed up. And if it wasn't, we ended up making the decision of, like, we're going to give a lead to 4 dealers in a local market, and may the best man win. So if a dealer doesn't have skin in the game, not meaning not paying for it, he's very motivated to beat out a competitor. And so that helped solve the problem. And For Control 4, I used to track, $10 million of incremental revenue to the Control 4 bottom line was tied to the leads that we generated and passed on to dealers, which I feel really good about.
Yeah, no, that's impressive.
The other, sorry,
Oh,
Ron, one other fun fact in a commercial for experience centers, and, yes, I'm biased towards Control 4 experience centers, but on average, we saw dealers who invested in these showrooms, we saw an average 20 to 40% business lift from having that opportunity to walk a consumer through the experience. And I think that's wildly powerful. And I'm not underestimating the cost, both in manpower and attention and capital to do that. But I think there's real payoff there.
Run that through the lens of COVID for me, though. So I'm not going to challenge anything you just said. I agree with everything. But now
I wasn't there for COVID, but
I know. So now we have COVID. So what do we do?
In my conversations with, and I stay in touch with a lot of dealers, and in conversations with those who have showrooms, they do virtual demos, right? Like, so you set up a Zoom, you have someone on camera, and you're literally walking. It's the same thing. You're walking them through a demo, and you don't have the person physically there, but you're doing it virtually. And a lot of dealers made the switch quickly during COVID and lockdown of like, hey, schedule a virtual tour. And no one's going to argue the fact that consumers locked in their homes spent a lot more money on technology during the pandemic than they didn't. And this was a vehicle to not just upgrade your network or get a new TV, but if you're doing this, let me show you this cool new thing. And it was really valuable. So that experiential, it wasn't live, it was virtual, still played a big role.
No, that makes sense. What role do you think after sale service has in the brand that is the integrator? And what is your opinion on how the industry currently thinks about that?
Well, I'm going to answer that question with my Control 4 hat on first. We would do customer satisfaction surveys a lot. And it was very frustrating in many instances. If a dealer didn't do right by the customer, they didn't like the dealer, but it reflected terribly on Control 4, right? Like, this isn't working, it's Control 4's fault. It might have nothing to do with Control 4. We stood up a customer advocacy group just to supplement what dealers were doing. If there was a place where consumers were really having a hard time, they could come to us and we would solve the problem if a dealer didn't. So I would be very defensive and pissy about integrators not abandoning a client. Now, we all know there's some crazy nut job clients out there that are demanding and awful. And at some point in time, you just have to cut your losses. Totally get that. But so much of your brand reputation is not just how did you sell, how did you install, but how did you take care of that customer after the install, right? And so I think it's really important part of brand reputation. Full disclosure, I advise Joey Kolchinsky's company, One Vision now. And I kind of learned to appreciate for the integrator that level of service doesn't have to come for free. And that we as an industry need to teach consumers, just as we need to teach them about like the beautiful, amazing experiences all this technology can provide and afford a family. It's like to keep all of that up and running and have access to help me now type of help. Consumers need to be willing to pay for that. And I recognize that that's kind of weird, but my career is based on convincing consumers to change behavior. It's not impossible. And I really kind of believe that there's real revenue opportunity for integrators to not just focus on the sell and the project, but really think about how can you optimize your service revenue. And I'm excited for dealers to kind of realize that opportunity because I think it could really help accelerate their growth.
Love that. And I'm looking at my notes here of so many other things I want to talk to you about, but I'm mindful of time. So I want to sneak in one more topic here, and that is CEDIA. I know you're doing a lot of work with CEDIA. And I also know that you're doing a lot of volunteer work to help integrators around the world. So you actually had shared that you offer help and guidance, and you don't charge for that time. If you so I guess I've snuck in two. So if you could talk about CEDIA, what are you doing there, and then how are you helping those that might need help?
Well, I think my favorite project I worked on with CEDIA was, and for those who are participating, the CEDIA Strong campaign, working with the leadership team to pull together really quickly a response for COVID. And, the level of engagement and how CEDIA, provided all of its certification and online curriculum for free during that period when there was a lot of uncertainty in the channel. Made me really proud of the trade association and the industry. Really loved the peer-to-peer knowledge sharing within the industry that always takes place, but kind of even more so during the pandemic. And I've been working with them on some partnerships and product type, kind of like developing some new programs. Giles Sutton launched the Propel program, which is really about bringing new brands into the channel and introducing new brands to integrators. One company I worked with on the side and introduced to CEDIA is a company called Bright. And I mentioned to you before we went live that I'm really into kind of wellness, and it's my mountain life fitness things and well tech. And, so there's some really interesting emerging new products and brands coming into the space. And Bright is like a restorative sleep product that I think is perfect for a showroom. Perfect integration with Lutron or Control4 or Savant.
It can be hard for those brands to break in.
Yeah. And so it's giving brands an opportunity to meet the channel. It's an opportunity for integrators to kind of learn and discover about new technology. It's emerging. The program's just kicking off. Ian Bryant, who I think is I have wild respect for him at CEDIA, is working with the technology group to identify new partners. And so I just think it's a way for CEDIA members to kind of think about how do they expand their opportunity, how do they expand their product offering.
Got it.
And then on the volunteer side, I think I spoke disparagingly as an ignorant person of CEDIA when I first moved into my role at Control4. But I love this channel. I had a wild ride, amazing career at Control4. So many dealers across the world have given me time and insight. My team hated when I would visit because when I would come back, I'd have a million new ideas, which meant more work for them. But I want, I offered up, I've done a lot of seminars at CEDIA online where if a dealer needs help with anything marketing, give me your perspective, how can you start this positioning work? What should I do for advertising? Do I do this logo or that? Or how can I connect with influencers in my market? I just use LinkedIn, set up a session, and I'll riff with you. I'll probably direct you to resources that you will have to pay for. One Firefly, Ron, not blowing smoke up your butt, but I think you do beautiful work. I really believe in the import of a web presence for integrators. I can get them thinking about that, but I'm not going to do the work. So I've, enjoyed calls with integrators in India and the UK and Mexico and Europe and different parts of the US. And I kind of feel like it's just a small token of appreciation for, a beautiful 10-year ride at Control4.
What's life look like for you these days, Susan? How are you still in that grind of the C4 days, or are things a little bit different? What's going on?
To quote Handmaids from Hulu, praise be no. I loved my immersive life and role at Control 4, but I never realized in my career that this phase existed, which is, I always thought like you run, 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 go, 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 go. That was life at Control my whole career. And then I thought there was no go. But the truth is there's this thing called slow go, and that is perfection. I work part-time. I work a little bit every day. I sit on a few boards. I focus on areas of technology I really care about: wellness, the CEDIA space, and energy, because I really loved that green tech stint I did at Control 4. So I kind of primarily focus in those areas. I have a few consulting gigs where I kind of serve as a virtual CMO or help, companies think about strategic issues or product development, program development. My strong suits in messaging and positioning, and I love that work. And I love the fact that I only have to worry about myself. I know what I'm capable. I never oversell because I know what I can do. Whereas I'm not dependent on other groups within my company or teams or people or, what they're getting pulled off of my work to do X, Y, or Z. And I spend the rest of my time enjoying the mountains, skiing, hiking, mountain bike riding, and a lot of time spoiling my grandchildren and cooking and spending time, enjoying this phase of my life.
I got a comment here from Mark, and I feel bad. Mark says Susan rocks, and he says, "Where are the grandkid photos? You're keeping us hanging." You're absolutely right. I did not prep and grab the grandkid photos to insert in the show.
You can friend me
apologies.
on Instagram, request on Instagram and Facebook, and you'll get more than enough.
I follow her. There'll be lots of grandkids, Mark. So if you want to see the beautiful family, definitely go there. Susan,
yeah.
No, go ahead.
No.
To close out, those listening or watching, what's the best way for them to reach you? I know you mentioned LinkedIn. Is that going to be the preferred
I think
method?
If we're not connected on LinkedIn, just mention this podcast or Ron or One Firefly, and I will be sure to connect with you. And then send me a message if you want to talk or set up some time. I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. And I've prepared my team with your LinkedIn URL, and so they should be dropping it down into the chat notes here imminently on Facebook. And of course, we'll be dropping that onto the dedicated page for Susan on the One Firefly website for the show, for the interview. Susan, it was a pleasure. Number one, it's been a pleasure getting to know you over these years and to learn about you and all of your wisdom. And I'm looking forward to many more years of that. But thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the time. It was great. And then waxing on about Control 4 and even more so this industry. There's so many incredible people and businesses here, thriving in CEDIA, and we just all benefit if we work together and help each other.
Amen. Definitely could not have said it better myself. Thanks so much, Susan.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right, folks. So there you have it. I could talk to Susan for hours and hours. In fact, I do talk to Susan for hours and hours. She's such a smart lady and full of so many unique perspectives that I learn something new every time we speak. And I hope those of you listening, tuning in, I hope you were able to maybe pick up on an idea or two that you could implement in your life or in your business. So on that note, as I always do when I close out the show, if you have not already subscribed to the podcast, please do so. Go to your favorite podcast app, just look up Automation Unplugged, and you can subscribe. If you like the show, or maybe you don't like, I'm assuming if you're listening at this point in the show, maybe you like the show. But you can leave us a comment or a review, and that helps us in all of those different algorithms. That will be greatly appreciated. And of course, you can follow us at One Firefly, and you can give us a call In terms of just broader marketing, I'm just kind of getting a little bit of a pitch here. We are going to be putting out, it's April right now. It's April 7th. So we're in May. We're probably going to launch to the industry our branding webinar that we did just this past week for HTSA. A lot of new content, new ideas. They're very much in sync with what Susan was talking about today. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for your inbox, or check out our website or social. You'll see us putting those messages out. And then later, I'm going to say into later May and June and July, we're going to be launching some brand new webinar topics, and we're partnering with some pretty cool partners to do that. And a lot of very relevant, very now topics to help you grow your business. I think we're all benefiting from an economy at the moment that's very robust. I know integrators around the world are very busy. And when we start to look at our crystal ball and look into the end of this year and into next year, I'm not going to say it's bad. I'm just going to say maybe it's a little more uncertain. And I think that there are ideas and things for us all to consider as how to prepare for that. So until next week, I will bid you all adieu. And I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Thanks, everyone.